This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
What's up, peeps? Today is another episode of the Diversity mini-series. Let's get into the intro and I'll tell you some more about it.
The problem in safety isn't deviation, it's complexity.
Health and safety has gone mad.
Health and safety is trying to unpick having gone mad in the past.
There's no one solution and one problem. The problem is that we are looking for one solution.
Does the structure of the team allow them to flourish?
Feel safe enough to be uncomfortable.
The environment defines our behaviours.
People aren't the problem, they're the solution.
Rebranding Safety, crushing the stereotype. Brought to you by Risk Fluent. What's up, peeps? Welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is the podcast and YouTube channel doing exactly what it says on the tin. We're here to change the perception of health and safety. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and all those magical algorithm thingamajiggies. Today we're talking to an amazing guy called Sam Goodman. You know him, he's been here before. You've probably been listening to the HOP Nerd. But today we're not talking about HOP, human organisational performance. We're talking about diversity. Before we get into that though, just a quick shout out from our sponsors. Rebranding Safety YouTube and podcast is sponsored by Paradigm Human Performance, and more specifically their HSE subscription service. Paradigm Human Performance's HSE subscription service is the perfect solution for those small, medium-sized enterprises. Those companies that are just absolutely rammed, are so busy, spinning loads of plates, juggling all the balls, and sometimes safety can fall by the wayside. This HSE subscription service is the perfect solution to put worker safety as the DNA of your organisation. But this is not just any type of compliance system. This is a compliance package that's been designed by human and organisational performance experts. This is going to help you utilise and understand the subject matter expertise of the worker. It's going to help you be a better business, but also satisfy that legal and that industry compliance. So if you're sold already, then you can use the email address and the phone number in the description below. But if not, go to the website, which is in the description below, and check out the Learning Organisation webinar as well. Thank you very much, Paradigm, for sponsoring Rebranding Safety. Just a quick shout out from Project Mollitiam as well, my company with Colin Nottage, which is the professional development mastermind community for safety and risk professionals. Anyone that's managing safety or risk, be that in your normal operational role or as a standalone career, this is a solution for you. This is like CPD with a rocket up its end. We're a mixed bag of weekly community calls, monthly philosophy calls, book clubs, and a quarterly event with some other benefits like a personal private LinkedIn group and also some online short courses as well coming very soon. So if this sounds like a solution for you, then go check out www.projectmollitiam.com. If not, you can message me or Colin and we'll get you on one of our community calls free of charge. You can give it a go and see if you like it before you buy it. Okay, so because we're in this diversity mini-series, I just want to do a little bit of a caveat because this is a really sensitive space and we're all kind of learning how to operate and talk about this stuff, but the conversations we do have are really open and really honest, and a lot of the time they're about really personal and sensitive stuff. So I just want you to remember that the conversations we're having are all coming from a good place, and we're all trying to promote diversity within risk management, within safety, within health, ultimately within the workplaces. So if you do hear something within this conversation with Sam or in any of the conversations within this mini-series, then please do feedback, but do it in a manner which is empathetic of what we're trying to achieve here. Please don't be basically calling us all the names under the sun and saying that we're horrible people, because we're not. We're trying to do something good here. We're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to share stories and challenges. But to do that, and for us to learn, we need to have these sensitive, open and honest conversations. And being, well, aggressive about it in your response is not going to help us have these conversations going forward. So please, if there's anything you think we need to learn or improve on, let us know, but do it in a manner which is nice, respectful and empathetic. Okay, now that's out of the way, let's get into my conversation with the amazing Sam Goodman.
Mate, I asked you to come on this pod. We are going in raw. Like we've done no prep for this. This is my favorite type of podcast. We're going in raw. So this is going to be either unbelievably shite or really good. There's no in between.
Well, I've got to say, so I don't know how you feel about it, but when people ask me to give them like a script before they come to the podcast, I just tell them, don't worry about it. Don't come.
See, I do.
I like this. I like this style.
This is my favorite. And then sometimes we have people who just like, yeah, cool, book a slot in, and I send them like guide questions. I call them guide questions. I rarely ever ask those questions, but I think they give people a sense of security. I'm not really sure.
You know, I've found that especially with folks that aren't that are not as on podcasts as often, I guess, as other folks. They're like, oh God, what are they gonna ask me? I need to be prepared. If I'm not prepared, what's gonna happen? The freaking world's gonna end if I'm not prepared. It's gonna be awful.
Some people do proper freak out, man. Like proper freak out. Like, oh my God, what do we need to do? I'm like, it's just a Zoom call. It's no different from a Zoom call you'd have with anyone else. We're just chatting. The only difference is on the top left corner, you can barely see it, but in the top left corner it says recording. That's it.
Well, that's kind of my approach. You know, I like to keep it super informal. You know, make it feel like we're hanging out at a bar somewhere just talking, you know,
exactly.
And I like that. I like that kind of feel.
Mate, I think there should be a podcast called Drunk Safety. And I think you should get drunk and then start recording and talk about safety.
I'm hearing a collaboration here.
Yeah,
definitely.
I feel like it's really bad for our health, though. I feel like it's not sustainable.
Well, you could only do this like once a month. You do like once a month episodes.
But can you imagine?
Properly, you could only do it about once a month.
Can you imagine getting absolutely sloshed though, like once a month, like the fourth Friday of the month, and you're just like, oh, nah,
it would be like every actual safety conference in Vegas.
Totally. Mate, I wanted you to come on because I wanted to talk all things diversity, and in our very undiverse profession.
Nice.
Really, isn't it?
I like it.
Yeah. Because
and I find out. It seems like I find out more daily how the lack of diversity within the safety profession. It's
terrible.
Yeah.
I always say this. I've said it in so many conversations that I've had with people. But in the UK, we have the IOSH, which is kind of the same as the AESSP or whatever you've got up there. I can't remember. And somebody from IOSH, I think it's like the head of policy, was at this event with me in February, and he stood up and he told everybody that they'd done some surveys of the membership, and like something like 70 or 80% of them are due to retire in 5 years, within 5 years. Yeah. 70 to 80%. It was something nuts like that, and I was just like, whoa.
I mean, I can just anecdotally speak to that. I mean, and you probably can too. I mean, you kind of look around and you see your peers in the industry, and they're all like 115 years old. Right? They're all like old, decrepit men. They're like going to die spinning in their office chair. So fortunately, I've got some really close friends, that mentors and friends, that I've had like 3 friends retire just in the past year. If that tells you the kind of the normal age range, I guess, of our profession. Love them to death. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I don't know. I'd rather be on a beach, I think, at 70 than hanging out in a power plant or a manufacturing facility.
Dude, honestly, we used to make a job I used to work for, the biggest safety team I've ever seen in my entire life. There was hundreds of us just in one business, and it was absolutely mad. And we used to have a conference like every year just of our safety team. That was how many there was. And they stopped doing it in like my last year or two. And I used to make this joke with a colleague saying, do you know why they stopped doing it? And they were like, nah, probably money. And I was like, nah, because the local hospital didn't have enough defibrillators for everyone that was going to have a stroke. That's probably a really insensitive joke, but
that's you'll notice that's what we kind of joke around too in the kind of the power plant world, because it's not just in the safety profession that I notice, at least in my world. It's in the utility space. Just not that many young folks kind of finding their way into those fields, it seems like, which is kind of sad.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of companies are really starting to. So I think the utility space that's been my world for practically forever, and I think it's a really interesting space because for that particular piece, because you do have that, you already have an industry that doesn't necessarily attract that many young folks. They're doing better. Certain organizations are doing a lot better of trying to really go out and work with colleges and universities and just trying to make things, trying to attract those folks, I guess. But then you insert a profession such as environmental health and safety inside of that kind of already big, old, starchy kind of profession. And it's even that much lack of interest, right? Where it's like, why would I want to work there?
Mm.
And then why would I ever want to do that job there? You
Mm.
know, that sounds really boring or really, really just kind of dull, I guess would be the right way to put it.
Oh, mate, I mean, I'm on the IOSH Future Leaders Steering Group, and this is a massive thing for us. Like we are really passionate about, and in that group we've got a gentleman from Nigeria, got an American lady, two young English ladies, and then probably three English white males. In myself, Robert Jukes, and Philip, and Liam, who's Irish, I think. Yeah, Irish. So I've either just got all of them wrong and offended that whole team by just completely describing them incorrectly. But yeah, like it's probably the most diverse group I've ever worked in within the safety profession. But it is just something we're lacking. But let's talk about you for a second. Like, if anyone's watching this on YouTube and doesn't know you, they'll probably be like, well, what makes Sam diverse? Because he's just a white male American, surely. And I did not know this about you when we last spoke until you put that post on LinkedIn. So why don't you just give us a little bit about you, not like the hot nerd about Sam I want to hear about.
Yeah. Well, and so, yeah, as you said, it's looks can be deceiving. And I guess that would probably be the first lesson to take away from anything that we talk about. But yeah, so if I wanted to get into what makes me diverse, is I will hopefully have a soon to be husband, right? And we have a daughter. And so I guess I would say strong and proud gay man, I guess would be the right way to,
Yeah.
the way to put that. But yeah, so that's kind of just to insert the diversity piece right there. That would be it.
That would be the tick. We've ticked that box.
We've ticked that box. We can get into some other rants, but now I'm officially allowed to talk about this.
I love it.
I'll get some hate for that one.
Your new book, Obscured, I haven't read it. I don't know much about it, but that must be something to do with that, because there's a photo of you and your partner on the front cover of it. Sure. It's a beautiful photo. But talk to me about the book. What's the book about?
So the book is really interesting because, again, it doesn't really touch on my professional life that much. There's a few little pieces. There's a couple stories, but a lot of what the book is about is really just this kind of this path of figuring out who you are, and then finally accepting who you are, and kind of, I don't want to use this kind of cliche term, but living your best life, right? It's kind of that path between those things. Because that was, for me at least, I found that to be a very challenging road. I grew up in a I had a very super religious upbringing. Okay. I grew up in a very small rural Appalachian Virginia town. So if folks aren't aware of what the term Appalachian means, just close your eyes and imagine what every stereotypical image of a hillbilly looks like, and that's where it comes from.
Well, like Deliverance.
Yeah, probably even worse. So think like corncob pipe, like dipped overalls, straw hat, no shoes, hunting squirrels for dinner, that kind of squirrel was delicious, by the way. But
oh no,
but that's that kind of area, and very small town. The little small town that I grew up in was probably about maybe 3,000 people, right? Yeah, pretty small little town, pretty spread out. On top of that, my graduating class in high school was like 50, right? Like it wasn't like some massive town, massive city. And small towns have a lot of cool things going for them, but unfortunately, a lot of small towns, not all, but a lot, they're not really known for their open-mindedness or their acceptance of anything that's air quotes different, right? Yeah. And religion has that same issue, right? Right. In a lot of ways, not very well known for their acceptance of anything that's different, or goes against the grain in any way. So I had both of those things kind of, again, a lot of positive, but in my particular situation, I had those certain things working against me in a lot of ways. Yeah. Which drove me into a situation where I couldn't really be myself, if long story short, right? So I spent the vast majority I spent all of my youth hiding who I was, and a good portion of half of my 20s, hiding who I was. And not only only when I was in a position in which I was safe to be able to have that conversation, did I have that conversation. So I was 2,000 miles away from where I grew up, and finally with an employer that was pretty open-minded before I was comfortable having that conversation. Because believe it or not, in Arizona, state laws still allow you to be fired for your sexual orientation. So
No way.
You can. Yeah, for sure. You can. Right. Yeah. Welcome to America.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's certain state laws that still allow discrimination within employment, within living situations, within, yeah.
Because I was going to say, like, what was not safe about your employer, but that's it. Wow. So you
A piece, yeah.
So-
Well, and not only that, let me say this, because so I'll share this. This will paint a little bit better of a picture, and then I'll shut up because I'll start ranting about it. But so I tell this kind of story in the book, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this person go on and on and on about how just think like stereotypical rant about how insert whatever minority here has ruined the world.
right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
think
I'm with
like
you.
think like lunatic
Yeah.
Westboro Baptist Church style
Mm.
kind of stuff. And so this older guy is going on and on and on about how, everything went downhill. And this is his words, not mine. His quotes: "The gays got the right to marry." That's when everything started going downhill, and on and on. This long rant about how, America needs to come back to God. And then there was some other stuff in there and some other kind of slurs. And then, this is in a boardroom. So this is the curveball. This is in like the 20th floor of a pretty prominent organization here in the United States. And this is a senior level director that's having this conversation.
Oh my
Right?
God.
And then it's like, all right, let's get down to Q4 reports.
No.
just off the cuff, whatever set him off down that path. Those organizations obviously shall remain nameless. Yada yada.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Names and locations have been changed to protect the. But so what was interesting about that, and I say all that because even in those situations, where maybe those laws do exist, where there are equal protections afforded under the law, it can still be a career killer. And I was told that early on when I first came out, that you've just killed your career. You're not going anywhere in power plant. Yeah. So there's special and unique challenges, I guess, is what I'm saying, that you face in those situations. I don't know. I'm trying to tread around this without sounding too shitty about it, I guess. But in more masculine industries, I grew up in construction, power plant maintenance, big, nasty, heavy hazard, high hazard type of stuff. In those industries in particular, it seems
very masculine.
You have to be a little more cautious. Yeah.
Very masculine.
And that was my life. Yeah, that was my life. That's the life I worked in.
That must have been. I imagine in your brain that did one of two things. It either made you extremely angry and potentially aggressive, or kind of made you shut down and just hide away. One or the other, or a bit of both.
There was probably some internalized anger, but it was more of shutting down.
Wow.
Because so I would tell you this. I think that the best way that I can describe it is, for me at least, every person's journey in anything is unique, right?
Yeah.
Your journey is always going to be unique. But for me, I found that it seemed like every time that I just described it almost like a roller coaster, like this kind of up and down thing, this hills and valleys. And it's like every time that you're like right there and things are going good and like you're just okay, like I'm ready to do this. I'm gonna like you would encounter one of those conversations, and it'd be like boom, and it's not one of those things where you're like, oh, I really care what they think. It's going, well, if I say something, am I going to have a job tomorrow? Right. Especially as like a younger safety professional, as a green safety professional in a field where you're just starting to earn some credibility. It's like, this could sink me like really fast. So yeah, it led to me definitely. It led to me mostly just shutting down and suppressing. It's covering, right? We say covering. A lot of times it leads to you just kind of covering who you are. The unfortunate part about covering up who you are, and I tell anyone to imagine this, is to just imagine one part of you. And that's all that piece is of me, is just one little piece of who I am. If you just imagine one little piece of who you are, imagine that you have to lie and hide that from the world for the next 20 years. And just imagine what that would do to you, right? Imagine something like that you would just have to hide. And anytime somebody was like, no, I don't like video games. I promise.
Mm.
Right. So whatever it is, even if it's video games or something crazy, right?
Yeah.
Other than being a serial killer, that's probably the only part that might not be good. But you might want to just let that one go. But
You need to tell someone about that.
you should probably tell someone. You should stop. You should seek help.
911 or 999, wherever you're located.
Right. So for me, what that ultimately led to was a really long, a very, very long bout with depression, obviously, because when you're having to shield and hide and pretend to be, it's not even pretend to be someone you're not, but it's just trying to cover a piece of your life.
Right.
It just leads you down that path. I was still dealing at that time, I was still dealing with a lot of the lack of self-acceptance, because again, kind of hearkening back to my childhood, I grew up in a situation, and for a very long time, told that who I was wrong, and who I was would ultimately lead to my eternal damnation. Right. So you're dealing with that on one side, and then you're dealing with, okay, if I actually get to be myself, I might be homeless. Right. So I don't know how this is going to work out for me.
Mate, I was not expecting that. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to say. Like, Jesus Christ. I knew America was a little bit still segregated to a point in the way they do things, but Jesus Christ, that was a step. Jesus.
Yeah.
Oof.
So it's pocketed, right? You know, and I will say this, I think that unfortunately it manifests in those ways sometimes. That's one of the greatest things about the United States being a democratic republic, is obviously that we have these micro labs of democracy when that functions right.
Yeah.
Right. I won't get into the whole government thing here, but let's just say it doesn't function really well these days. But when that functions right, because I can be like, you know what? Screw you guys, I'm going to Denver.
Yeah.
I mean, screw you guys, I'm going to California, or I'm going, I can basically vote with my feet and vote with my dollars wherever I want to go live and work and all that stuff. But you definitely see those challenges. I would say that things are getting I like to say that things are getting better. I think in the professional world, I've noticed that things are getting better, but it's still a pretty common thing. We were kind of joking about, and I'll throw this out there too. The LGBTQ plus community, the queer community, as a gay man, a lot of times our image has been so boiled down and distilled down into this kind of stereotypical kind of image of a gay man. You can all close your eyes. I'm not going to paint that picture. You can do that for yourselves. But to that stereotypical picture, and it's there, right? It's there. But often I'm not included in that picture, right? So I say that because a lot of times in the places that I find myself, people are like, "Oh, look, there's white straight Sam," right? And there's like, we can say whatever we want, right? So you almost get to be the prying ear to some kind of more horrific stuff. So I can't say that it's getting all the way better, because I still hear a lot of those things. But I will say at an individual level, for sure, like shitheads always exist, right? There's always going to be homophobes. There's always going to be racists. There's always going to be they're going to be there, right? At an organizational level, I think it's getting much, much better, at least here in the United States. There's people that my little bit of story that I share, and the story that I share in the book, the stories that I share in the book, there are folks that have had it 100 times worse than I have. I feel very fortunate for the way that things worked out for me. Some people don't have it quite that easy.
Do you think a lot of it comes out? You were saying about that village thing. I remember you shared the comments that you had from when you shared obscured on, I think it was Facebook and Twitter. I can't remember. And the response was just, I'll be honest with you, I was shocked. I was unbelievably shocked to hear. Not just like, it wasn't even just like the disagreement. It was like the pure hate in some of the statements were like, what the hell? But I commented on it, and if I'm honest, I felt extremely vulnerable since I've commented on it, and thought someone's going to spot that one day and take it completely the wrong way. But there's an episode that will come out just before this one where we spoke to a lady and we talk about diversity, and I kind of reiterated what I said to you, to her. But just to kind of cover that, it's kind of similar, I think, to what you said about being raised in those kind of small towns, small villages, low population. low experience or low exposure, I think, is key. So my upbringing was extremely sheltered. Didn't travel, didn't experience anything. I experienced a stereotypical working class white family, friends, etc. Got to school, and then there was some kind of ethnic minorities in there, but I remember one person who was out as being a gay man in that school, and he was, if you close your eyes and imagine a stereotypical gay man, he was that. We didn't get it, Sam. Like, I was I was a really young boy. I didn't get it, and I didn't get it for a long time. And then I got to a certain age where, and I think actually my safety career has massively helped me, because I've learned to be empathetic. I've learned to be understanding. I've learned to appreciate the well-being side of things. And I've learned that, like you said earlier, everyone has a different journey, and who am I to dictate how somebody should live? And now I've managed, only through exposure, only through getting to know people that are, Sherry, my wife, she's got two cousins, both of which are lesbians, and they are the loveliest people I've ever met. And I'm not saying I made an assumption that if you were gay or lesbian or any of the others that you were not a nice person. I never thought that. I don't know. It's really strange. It was kind of like I was never exposed to it, and that made me, I don't know, uneducated.
That's what I was going to say. I think you're hitting on something that's super, super important. There's a couple pieces there I think that are important to unpack, because the more that I have this conversation, the more that it comes up. Right? It's okay to say ignorant, right? Ignorant's not a bad word.
Yeah,
right?
that's
it's not
it.
An evil word. I've been ignorant to things many times in my life.
Yeah.
Right? To many other people, to many cultures, I've been ignorant, and I still am. Right? We all find ourselves.
It's kind of like an ugly naivety, isn't it?
It is. Right?
Yeah.
And so I really draw a line there between those two things.
I'm still here. My camera's just dead.
You're all good.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
I really draw a line between those two things, because there's two separate sides of this coin. Like, I'm not this. Again, I might get some hate for this. I doubt it. Well, I don't know. I get hate if I can be like, I can say like teddy bears are great, and I'll get horrible hate mail. But for me, it's I think there's a huge difference between that kind of ignorance to it, and then kind of this other side of that, which is just this purposeful hate. I think that there's two different things there. I'm not so woke as to say you can't say anything offensive, because to me, it's totally fine. Like, it's totally within your right to say offensive things. Like, to me, it really comes back to this kind of notion that, your intent matters to me, and it matters a lot. I think intent matters. And kind of in our more woke modern society, we've removed this thing of intent, but intent still counts.
Yeah.
Right. If you point a slur in someone's direction, with the intent to harm them, that's probably not great. Right. You're probably an asshole. Let's just say that right now. You're probably an asshole. If you accidentally use that same word, or just don't realize that you might be offensive to someone and there's no ill intent behind it, I don't classify those things as the same one and the same thing, right? That's just me personally.
Yeah.
And when I hear that kind of conversation around, like, because everybody, I don't want anyone to feel bad for how they used to feel. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think that's kind of, I think that's probably not great. Everyone lives and you learn and you kind of go through life and you get better. That's kind of the entire point of everything that we're doing, right? I've held views in the past that were stupid, right? And I can look back and now say, I hope I have a little bit more wisdom now, and I've grown, and I don't hold those same views. That's okay. Yeah. Right. But you were touching on this piece of exposure, which I think is really, really important, because here's where that line comes into play, is that the best way that we can help people get to know us is by letting them get to know us. Yeah. Right. That's the whole purpose behind this, behind the book. I can't just go out and march in the street and go, accept me, damn it, no matter what. Right. but if I go out and I tell my story and people realize, kind of to your point, it's not that people assume that I'm like a bad guy, or people assume this
No.
or that or anyone else. It's just by sharing that story and getting to know people, you're like, oh, they're just as painfully normal as I am.
Yeah.
And that's all I think anyone really craves or desires there, is just that. Right. And I think that once you're exposed to people, and once you kind of learn that crazy truth that us in this community are just as painfully normal as you are,
Yeah.
then if you choose to continue down a hate-filled path, that's on you. Right after that point. But yeah, I think that there's a couple pieces there. Again, intent matters. I think that's super important. And I think storytelling is how we solve a lot of the world's problems in general. And this is no different. I think that by storytelling and getting to know each other and having conversations, I don't know. I've always just held this belief that people can toss around and call me names. They can say whatever they want about me. They can say whatever they want about the LGBT plus community. But I've just got a feeling that if you sit down and you talk to me, you're going to have a really hard time hating me. Right.
Yeah.
You might not like me, but you're not going to hate me.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, I really like what Gary Vee talks about. He talks about you can't judge without context.
Right.
But, and I remember him saying that line about a year or two ago. I heard it on his podcast, and I was like, wow, that is so powerful. And that's for anything.
Yeah.
You know, I look back on the old me, and I just realized how judgy I was. Like, I was an arsehole. I wasn't a hateful person. I was just, I just judged things or people by their car or their clothes or their, anything. Like, and it seems to be, I wonder, Sam, do you think it's like a time served thing? Do you think as a generation? So I think like my younger brother, he's like 10 years younger than me. My wife's younger brother and sister are a similar age. They don't have these tendencies. I wonder if it's like a time, so as these generations come up, they're more exposed to these things, these different, they're not even different. It's hard to say it like now, isn't it? Like the different way of life. Like it's just, they're exposed to it not being a different thing. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm chewing my words here.
No, I get it. And that's the fun part about talking about this stuff, is you kind of have to figure it out as we talk. Right?
Yeah.
But I think so, because like I said, I can look back on some beliefs that I've held, to your point about being judgy. I think that I've been judgy, right? I mean, I grew up and I'll give a really good example. I grew up, as I mentioned, in the Appalachian region of Virginia, and huge drug problem, huge poverty problem, a pocket of people that basically have no jobs, a lot of depression, and basically free access to pain medication. And you just do the math, right? I mean, it just kind of goes insane. And for the first little bit of time that I left that area, I finally like fled. I was like, in the U.S., as you're going through high school, you kind of have this dream. If you're an East Coast townie kid, your dream is to leave and get in a car and drive to the West Coast. You're going to drive to the West Coast and hopefully make it to California. I made it to Arizona. If you're in California, you're like, I'm going to leave California. You're going to drive to New York City. As soon as you're just going to abandon life and go be a bum living in New York City or something. But so when I finally did that, it was very easy for the first few years of my life. I caught myself doing that too. I'd look back and be like, oh, piece of shit little town. I'd go back and visit and I'd be like, oh, these awful people. I can't, almost too like pinky out, too good to be around these people now, and so I think it's human nature to fall into that trap. I believe, that's probably a pretty normal occurrence. And then finally you realize that you kind of wake up, or at least I did. And I think many of us do, where you go, that's stupid. I'm an asshole. Right? And I guess it goes back to like, you forgot where you came from, kind of.
It's like it's a natural reaction, like and it's interesting when you look at all this stuff. Like we are like ingrained biologically, genetically, psychologically as a social species, and there's that social aspect is we like to mirror ourselves. Like we psychologically like to be in a group that reflects ourselves, and it annoys me whenever I say this, but because I say it all the time. But one of my favorite books is Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed, because it's all about cognitive diversity, but he talks about physical diversity as well in there. And he says about in there, like we crave to be in a group that reflects our mind because it's safety, it's psychological safety. Right. So you end up like having this kind of reaction, this just genetic reaction. Sometimes you have to be so aware of, like, it's so easy to judge, like it's a natural reaction. So like exactly like you say, I've got to this position now in my brain, in my kind of cognitive way of thinking, that I feel a bit more, much more open-minded, much more accepting of so many other things, and intrigued. Actually, I've gone beyond accepting. I'm intrigued. I think it's beautiful. Like, we live in this world that like anyone can travel anywhere, be anything they want to be, love whoever they want to love, and just do absolutely anything. You can even become a different gender. Like, what an amazing world we live in. Like, that's unbelievable. And it's amazing. Like, you can be anything you want. But now I've gone the other way, that I judge people exactly like you say. I judge people that judge people you know, if they say, "Oh, I don't agree with the big problem we've got in the UK. I don't agree with Eastern Europeans coming over here and stealing all our jobs." I judge people that say that, but I'm still judging. So I'm not doing what Gary Vee says by going, right, where's the context? What's driving that person to say, "I don't like all these Eastern Europeans coming and stealing our jobs"? And I think that's that systems thinking piece that I like, that I get from work, that I try to apply to everything now.
I think you hit something that's very crucial, because again, we live in the woke generation, right? You get so woke that you're back to hate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
you just hate at the other end of the scale, don't you?
Exactly. Right. You just kind of we become so woke that we now hate other people, right? It's again, not to tie American politics into this, but just turn on news and watch what's happening here.
Yeah, it is. It's like that though, isn't it? It's far left versus far right now. There's no. It's just like, why do we have to completely hate each other and be so angry when we're talking about something? Well, even if you talk about environment, it's the same, you know. Or I'm an environmentalist. Are you? No, I'm not sure about it. Well, then you're a dickhead. Do you want us all to die? It's like, hang on a minute, slow down.
Well, you have to. So I think a lot of this comes from kind of that inherent need of tribalism, right? We want kind of the point that you're making. We want to be around the people that think the same way, that look the same way, that feel the same way.
Exactly.
And if you're not on my team, then fuck you.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the way that we go about that. And again, I think you painted a pretty good picture of that. That's really what we were kind of talking about, right? I mean, we were really talking about I'm in my tribe, and if you're not in my tribe, stay away from me, right? I don't want to chat with you. But I think that the problem is that all that has gotten so extreme, right? There's or at least what's visible, right? Without diving too deep down that rabbit hole. At least what we're shown is the extremes, because the extremes sell in a lot of ways, right? We're talking news media and those things. But yeah, I think we have to be cautious, because it'd be very easy obviously in politics, it's very easy. I just think that that's a very clear picture how easy it is to hate people, right? And hate people without even knowing those people, right? And I don't know, that just seems kind of dumb to me. Like, I don't know those people. I can't say that I hate that person. You know, I don't know, right? I don't know until I know. Right? I find it quite hard to hate people in general. But I would never know if I do unless I chat with you, right? I'm never going to really know. I'm just drawing these broad assumptions, right? Based off of what I see and what I hear, not really what I know. Right. So I think that it is important to, again, back to that point on conversations. I think that's where it's so vitally important, is that we go and we actually seek out and talk to people about any of this stuff. That's where I think conversations like this are so important, or telling stories are so important. I think that the more that we can really know and understand folks, and understand the why, kind of back to the point, there's a why there. And I'll share a little bit more of an intimate story. But so when I came out officially, I was in my mid-20s, as I said. And I was already living I was kind of more West Coast America at that point. And when I came out, when I came out to my mother, that was it. Like, we didn't have a relationship for 3 years.
No way.
I didn't speak to my mother for 3 years. And let me say this, she didn't speak to me for 3 years.
Oh, dude.
Let me put it that way. So I share that not to pick on my mom at all. That's not my point here. And I get into a little bit more detail of it in the book. But it's this. She was raised in a very Southern religious household. She was raised to believe that everything that I was now saying that, hey, this is me, was an abomination. And she took it as almost a personal slight, right? Because she felt that stabbed her deep in her religion, right?
Yeah.
And so she's taking her personal truth, right? I would encourage folks that haven't heard this chat by Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's a chat out there called Neil deGrasse Tyson's the Three Truths.
Yeah, it's great.
And I will encourage you to understand that your personal truth is not fact, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't apply broadly to everyone else. We all have to acknowledge that at some point, right? I think that's a very important lesson, a lesson for all of us to learn. But she was basically taking that personal truth and saying, no, this personal truth, this thing that I believe is factual. It's 100% factual. It is so factual that I'm in so fear of your mortal soul and mine now because of who you are, that I would rather have a dead son than a gay one. So don't talk to me anymore.
Fuck.
Right. So I basically lived 3 years of my life. Right. And I'm saying this again, not to go, oh, mean, person, but to say that 3 years later, and now, like, I'm probably call my mom when I leave here. Right. Like, it takes time for some people to kind of get past some of those things that they have been taught. And that's really what it is to me. I think that for her, she was raised in a situation where that's all that she knew. Right. She grew up in a rural Appalachian holler. Yeah. We'll call it a holler here. And a lot of people in those areas never leave. That's all that she really knew. And then eventually, once she, through force, unfortunately, it was forcefully, got to know a gay person. It took her some time, and she still struggles. She's still working on some things. Yeah. But it eventually led to her being much more open-minded. Yeah. Unfortunately, the sad part about that is we lost 3 years of a relationship. Yeah. In the long run, the great thing about that though is that she's now a much more open-minded and understanding person. And I say that entire thing though, again, to understand the why. When people say those hate-filled comments, I don't know. I tend to lean in and believe that people are good, right? And I don't know. I don't see people just saying those things just willy-nilly, no reason, right? It's coming from somewhere. It started from somewhere. Yeah. And I think you pry into that and you break some of those things down and you change minds. Again, not by shouting about what's bad, but showing them what's good, right? And I think that's through building those relationships.
Yeah, but you have to take into account that it's kind of years and years of what's the word? I'm trying not to use.
It's like conditioning.
Yes, thank you, because I was struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's conditioned. It's like that, and that's no different from someone that has different conditioning that isn't religious, like non-religious conditioning is exactly the same.
Right, for sure. The unfortunate part though about all of that stuff, as we're kind of talking personal truth, at least here, as we were kind of mentioning, it's just now starting to change a lot, or it's been changing since, probably over the past 10 years or so. But so much of those kind of personal truths, whether they be religious or otherwise, often people feel so passionately about their personal truths that they feel the right to force others to follow their personal truths. Yeah. And the biggest implement to do that is through rule of law. Right. So that's where we back to the kind of the point of like, well, I can't force you to change unless I can do that through the law. So of course, Arizona should have laws to where we can discriminate against gay people. Of course, landlords should be able to not allow them to rent places from them. Yeah. Of course, your employer should be able to fire you, because how else will I be able to push my personal truth upon other people? So kind of back to getting to the why of where some of that comes from. Yeah. It's personal truths we usually hold very passionately. And unfortunately, with personal truths, we then feel the need to, I guess, spread that belief system to others. And when I really just fall back to this really kind of basic point. And this is the way that I primarily try to live my life, is that I don't really care. Right. Like, so when I'm talking about when I approach people, I don't really care. Yeah. Right. Maybe that sounds mean. Maybe that's not woke enough for everybody, but I don't really care. And when I say that, I mean this, is that whatever you're doing, does it make you happy? That's all I need to know. Is it hurting anyone else, and does it make you happy? I don't care then.
Also,
I don't really care.
It's like I don't care because it doesn't impact me. in any way, shape, or form. Like if you're sitting down
Right.
having a chat with a bloke and you're having a beer, blah, you just met them, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden they go, I used to be a woman. What does that
Right.
change the last hour of the conversation you've had over beers? It doesn't. I
No.
don't care because it doesn't impact me in any way, shape, or form. I like if
Right. Well, I think it's probably going to add another hour to the conversation. It'll be like, tell me about that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. What did that look like? How did that work? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it is like, I think that is the best way to say it. Like, I don't care, but that's a nice thing that I don't
Yeah.
care. Not like, oh, I don't care because I'm a horrible person. It's like, I don't care because it doesn't impact me. And in fact, it does impact me, but it impacts me kind of positively because
Yeah.
it enables you to feel comfortable to have a conversation with me.
Well, I think that probably that I don't care, I think is probably the optimal state.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's probably the optimal state.
Like it's not
because
a thing.
if you care, right? If you care, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. If you get to the point to where you're caring too hard in either direction, it's a thing, right? It's a
like it shouldn't be a thing to have to say, oh, I'm gay.
Right. Well, you're instantly othered in those situations, right?
Yeah.
You instantly kind of check the other box.
Yeah.
Right? And again, if it's just to the point like that, no one cares. This is not a thing, so it doesn't matter. And just do you, I do me.
Yeah.
And I don't have to ever say anything. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's kind of the optimal state because you don't end up in the situations to where I shared this. Jay Allen and I were talking about this a while back during a live stream thing that we did. And that's what I said. I was like, and I know it's an overused example, but I don't demand that straight people walk up to me and tell me that they're straight.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like I don't place those demands on society because of my personal truths. Right. I don't say, well, I'm gay and that's who I am. So now I think everyone else in this room should tell me your sexual orientation. You're forcing me to tell you mine.
Yeah.
Everyone else tell me yours.
Yeah. It's also like, it needs to not be a thing because I remember talking to like, it's really like, I'm not saying it's hard for like straight people, but like here's a story from my genuine life. Like, so I remember talking to a colleague. I'd known the colleague for a few months. I was at a new job, blah blah blah, and I just said like, oh, have you got like a wife, a family, as a figure of speech, just a statement. He said, oh, my partner, and I was like, right, okay. And then to be fair to him, like he was proper chilled out that he went, my partner is a bloke, by the way, James. And I was like, cool, man. Yeah. And I said, oh, sorry. I said wife. And he was like, no, I'm not bothered. But like, there was like 2 or 3 seconds where I felt I had to analyze what I said. I felt like, oh, I've said something wrong. So it's kind of like the benefit of getting to that point, I think of like, it's not a thing that like, I don't care. It means also for like straight people or anyone else, like you don't have to analyze what you've said because it's just not a thing anymore.
I think that's so important because I don't feel that that's fair for anyone to be put in that position to where you're constantly walking on eggshells trying to think about what you can and can't say. Right. I had posted something a while back talking about a little bit about just freedom of speech and just people being able to say whatever they want to say. Like
well, this comes back to that intent thing that you were saying earlier.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. I mean, like, look at art, look at art. Art is in a lot of ways inherently violent, right. And polarizing and scary, right. For a reason. Right. And the same thing with writing, right. Like a lot of the stuff that I write, like I'm not sensitive in the way that I write, right. I just kind of pour stuff out and just profanity and all
out loud, yeah,
right. And it'd be very easy to say, well, I don't know, because even writing this book, I caught myself in the latest book doing that too a little bit, going, well, what would somebody? Oh, well, I'm like, no, I can't care, right? It's kind of back.
But what about
put out what I think? But I think it's really important. Again, you hit the nail on the head again with intent because. That exact conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that doesn't offend me. Again, maybe I'm not woke enough, but if somebody walks up to me and is like, oh, are you married, wife, kids? I'll be like, that wouldn't offend me if someone had said that.
Yeah. I don't think it offends.
It's getting to the point though to where if I walked up to you, so you husband, kids,
Yeah.
to where maybe that wouldn't be offensive because that might offend someone, right?
Yeah, like God, it's a minefield, isn't it? Sometimes, but like
it shouldn't be though. I think that's what I'm saying. So I want to say this because this is again me. I can only speak for myself,
of course. Yeah.
But if your intent isn't to harm me, right? I don't know. I don't get offended. I don't. Maybe I'm not woke enough. If someone asks me if I have a wife and kids, I'm not going to be offended, right? If someone says, I have friends that joke with me in ways that people might find wildly inappropriate, right? That I don't find offensive. Sorry, I don't know. I don't find it offensive, right?
Yeah.
But if your intent is to harm me or harm someone else, right? If you're using there's specific words, obviously, or certain things that can kind of go either way. Yeah. if your intent is to harm someone, then you're a shithead. Yeah, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But if you're just hanging out with the guys talking shit, I don't know. I don't get offended. I'm sorry. That's just,
does it not come into that?
I don't want people to feel that need, as you said, to feel like they're navigating a minefield constantly because that's about as othered as you can get, right? When you walk in and then the conversation changes.
Yeah,
right?
You don't want that either.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's not a position I want to be in or force anyone into either.
But when did it go? Like, it's difficult. What's difficult, I think, is like, is like I remember when I was a kid that gay was something I would use as a derogative term to a male friend, to be like right. And one of the Hangover films, like that ongoing joke on there where the kid I can't remember does something and the guy just from the background goes "Hook gay," like that does that not then Sam come into like that kind of systematic discrimination? Like, I get where you're coming from. I do 100% get where you're coming from, but it's like I as a child would use the word gay as a derogative term, so therefore that is offensive. Like, I wouldn't do it now.
It could be, it could be. Again, I think like so watching the Hangar, I thought that joke was hilarious. I don't find any bit of problem there. Whether or not it feeds into more systematic issues, right? Maybe. But again, I think that I think what's when I so like that film in particular, like when I watch that joke, when I hear that term kind of chucked around like that, I don't know. It still falls back. It always falls back to intent with me.
Yeah.
Right. So you as a child going around going gay, right? Yeah. I don't think that you were like, I'm going to destroy homosexual people. With this term. You're just going, this is funny. I've seen it in a movie. It's hilarious.
Yeah. True.
Right. So I don't know for sure. I think that there is something to be said about, obviously being conscious to the power that your words can have. I think that there is something to be said there. But I think on the flip side of that coin, there is an understanding. There has to be an understanding with the individual too, that words only have power over you to the extent that you allow them to. Right. So I think that there is something to be said. Now, there is probably a much deeper conversation that you kind of touched on, probably in the middle of those two things, going, well, what's the impact that this has on everything else?
Yeah.
Right. What's the impact of this, on the system, right? I think that there probably is a conversation out there. But again, I don't know. I mean, just kind of spitballing, talking out loud. If you have 100 kids rolling around, that watch the Hangover screaming gay versus one person that really holds hate in their heart saying gay, right? Which one really causes more, if any, causes damage to the system?
True.
Right. So I think there's probably
which one would you prefer to have?
Yeah. I'll take the look. It's for me. I'll take the gang of 100 kids that are going around using the term that they have no intent behind at all. Any day of the week, the person that's just a true shithead.
Do you think that because you've experienced it, what it is like when somebody actually means?
Yeah.
When it's actually seen or perceived as a bad thing to be gay. So because you've experienced that somebody going gay is less of an impact on you.
Well, look, I'll probably lose my woke card a little bit here, but I guess I'm allowed to do this, I guess. But I catch myself doing like, well, that's gay. Like I catch myself doing that sometimes too. I'm not again. So I can't hold other people to a higher standard than I hold myself, right? But again, it's back to the intent, right? I think it's still
Mm.
back to the intent. I think that it matters. Context matters. The intent matters. All of those things matters. If we, in these kind of conversations, it's much easier, it seems, to pretend that they don't, because we don't have to pry into any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. We find ourselves just going, well, just don't say those things. And you're like, anybody? Like, I can't say, like, you, like, nobody, like, at all.
Yeah.
I don't
Because
know.
like I wouldn't have a problem if somebody went, "Oh, James, that was so white." Do you know what I mean? Or James, that was so working class. Like,
yeah,
I say, I don't think I would have a problem. I'm not really sure until I get in the moment. But like me and my wife make a joke between the pair of us. Like, if we're trying to, I don't know, be cool or like sing or dance, like we'll both go, "God, we are so white." Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Because you know, we just can't dance. We've got no rhythm. So like, I don't know. I suppose it's similar to that. I don't know. I think again, I'm spitballing here. I'm not really sure.
Well, and so that's where I think that I don't think you fix a lot of these problems. So here, let me break things out a little bit. I think this is probably important, because we're talking kind of grand scheme of the world here.
Yeah. We will fix the world, Sam. We will.
Right, we will. We're going to make the world a better place to work, and just in general.
These two little podcasts is going to change the world.
Exactly. I think so. You have kind of the as we kind of said, the system issues. I think in a lot of areas we have kind of issues just with general law, the way law's written. We talked about the United States in general. I think you fix that. Like, that's easy. Right.
Definitely.
That's easy to legislate that, right?
Yeah.
I think you can
like,
fix
don't be a
stuff.
dickhead. Like, it's law.
Not even that far. Just being like, listen, you treat everybody the same, period. End of story. That's the law.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't discriminate people for any reason. And we kind of say that here a lot.
You'd still have businesses.
That written down in a couple. Yeah, we've got that written down here in a couple places.
You'd still have businesses going, yeah, but how do we actually do that? Have you got any guidance on how to be treat everyone the same? What do you want me to say? Treat everybody the same?
Exactly. So that's it, right?
Yeah.
Just I mean, if we could capture that in law, which we have in 1,000 different ways for whatever reason, it just doesn't quite go. If we just left it at that, if that was the true law of the land, right? If that was the true law of the land, is just, you just, no matter what, you just treat people the same. You would treat people the way you would want to be treated. There we go. How about that?
Yeah.
But you get over to the other side that we're talking about, where it's all these little interactions. I don't think you fix those on a systematic scale. I don't know if you can, right? I think you really work through it the way that we're working through this right now. Right? You have conversations with people. If something offends me, I need to tell you that it offends me. Right.
And that needs to be, we need to be comfortable to have that. Like, this is psychological safety, what we're talking about now. It needs to be, me and you need to have a comfortable enough relationship that I go, oh God, Sam, that was so camp. And you go, sorry, James, that's really offensive.
Right.
And I go, oh shit, sorry, mate, I didn't mean that. And you go, that's cool, man. Let's carry on. Like, that needs to be
it can't be this weird, like, virtue signaling kind of thing either.
Yeah,
it's just got to be a real meaningful conversation, right? It's just, you shouldn't feel bad in the sense that, you know, we all kind of have that foot in our mouth kind of moments, but you shouldn't feel like a horrible, evil person because you might have said something stupid, right? I say stupid things all the time. Go back and listen through my podcast.
Like you offend like everyone that believes in the triangle every day.
Right, exactly.
And to be honest, Sam, you're really judgy when it comes to zero and the triangle.
Very judgy. So I think that's where I go when we're talking about that, is like, you have some different avenues here. You kind of have the grand scheme of things over here. I'm the last person that will say writing the law will fix stuff, right? But I think you do have to have the legislative ground correct, right?
Yeah.
But I don't even think that's really where my concern is at. For me, it still comes back to what we've been talking about. It's these little interactions, and to your point, to have the ability to have those interactions, right? If you say the slightest off-putting thing to me and I explode, we're just not going to talk anymore. Right.
Yeah.
You're going to be so cautious about the way that you approach anything. You're not going to be comfortable bringing any questions. Right. And that's what I tell people all the time. You know, people, I'm like, you gotta quit. Just ask me. Like, if you have something you want, I gotta tell you. If you want to know if something offends me, you can ask me if it offends me. Like, I'll tell you that. Like, I think it's having those conversations. are probably much more curative than a lot of the other things that we've really historically focused on with, again, just trying to just say, well, just make everything better, magically
Yeah.
make everything better. I don't think we do that. I think we change. Unfortunately, you change a culture one person at a time.
Changes
Right.
like a virus.
Right. You change a culture one person at a time. And you
Yep.
do that by having these positive interactions,
Mm.
right? Not by going out and saying, well, James, let me tell you what was wrong with all of what you just said. You don't change folks' hearts and minds like that.
Yeah.
Right. I think people start to see the positive when you show them the positive.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of back to when we talk about change and stuff in organizations. Right. I don't focus when I go to an organization to help bring about change. I don't focus on everything that's shit. Right. I introduce so much good that the bad stuff just kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Right. It falls off the plate. Right. Now you've got a couple things you might have to go, okay, that's really bad. But everything else, you just introduce more positive, and the positive will eventually outweigh the bad.
And it's also, it's like loads of people with different tolerances for words and phrases, etc. So
Exactly.
some people find something offensive, and that kind of needs to be okay. While some people, but the people that are offended by something also need to be okay with the fact that it doesn't offend me. So the simplest example I could give you, right, is at the beginning when I first did my podcast. So we've spoke about this. When I first did my podcast, it was like therapy for me. So I swear a lot, and I swear a lot. So it's like in my older podcast, I don't do it so much now, because if I'm honest, I feel like I've been cured to a point. I'm much less an angry person because of this podcast. Yeah, I've mellowed out loads, dude. Honestly. So like I just get to relax a little bit more, not so angry, and also I found a bit more vocabulary to be able to do that. But to my point, and I've had a couple of people. But I remember messaged me saying they didn't like the swearing, and that's okay. If you don't like it, that's okay. This is not the channel for you then, because I swear. It probably is now because I don't. But somebody messaged me saying that it was really offensive and not acceptable in their culture, and I didn't message back because I didn't want to get into the debate or the argument or kind of upset someone. But I understand that that's not acceptable in your culture, but I'm not in your culture. I'm in my culture, and swearing is acceptable because my culture is me, my wife, and my baby. That's my culture in my house, and that's it. So we swear. So the long and short of it is acceptable in my culture, and my podcast is an extension of me. And that's difficult, isn't it? Well, like we impose kind of how you should be, talk, walk, swim, dress, the whole shebang on people. We have to create a mold, whereas in a way we just need to accept that everybody walks, talks, dresses differently, believes in something different from the next person, loves someone different, etc.
Right. Yeah. I think that there is something to be said there about that, about the individual, right? The largest majority is the individual. Or the largest minority, excuse me, I said majority. The largest minority is the individual, right? And we forget that a lot of times, that no matter, what culture, what macro culture that we're in, all those kind of things, at the end of the day, we're all painfully unique, right? I mean, we're still just ourselves. And I think that is a very important thing to remember as well, that I don't know. Again, me personally, I don't like when people lump me into any community, right? That's just me. Right. Because I feel that I'm just me. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't really feel the need to kind of, again, I think the LGBT plus community is great. There's a lot of amazing things. There's vibrant and colorful and an amazing community, but I don't just like being immediately lumped into that community any more than I like just being lumped into there's Sam, the white guy community. Right? Or there's Sam, you want to talk about stereotypical minorities. Think about like that hillbilly imagery from rural Appalachia, like the poor dumb hillbilly that was kind of poured across the United States by massive coal companies to discredit the people living in that region, so they could basically come in and rape and pillage their land. There's an excellent movie on that out there. I can't remember the name, so I'm going to send people on a wild goose chase now.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to Google that.
Yeah.
Big oil company rapes and pillages American state. Like
that's kind of every state, I think. But so I still fall back to that. No, I think that is still an important fact, that you have to remember that, to your point, you kind of develop your own little cultures as well. And you're still going to have your own beliefs, your own things that you hold true. Again, I encourage folks to go look at that stuff by Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's such a kind of thing. You read it around your personal beliefs and factual beliefs and all these kind of other things as well. It's super good. But yeah, I think that is probably, for me, where I kind of land on things. And we're talking a lot about speech. We're talking a lot about people's, the things that they should or shouldn't say. Here comes my very American pitch. Okay. Is that I believe on unpredicated freedom of speech. Absolutely to my core. It's been a while back, but I actually wrote a piece.
You also believe in being able to own your own rifle and things like that as well.
I've got a few. Of them.
Sorry, that was really. I just judged you because you're American. No,
so
this is a minefield.
No. So no. So I think that you brought up a very interesting point, that stereotypes do come from somewhere. Right?
Yeah, true.
So I probably own a small arsenal.
Do you actually?
I do actually, yeah.
No way.
So let me say this: I own assault weapons,
mate.
So
I don't agree with that.
I do. I own assault weapons.
Okay, we're going there.
Here, let me go a little bit farther. I own AK-47s.
Nah. Okay, we're going there. I want to have this discussion. I want to have it. I'm going to let you finish your point, but
let me finish this point. There. Because I think at the end of the day, you should have that freedom of speech, unadulterated freedom of speech, as long as it's not specifically, this is the very American interpretation of this, specifically calling for violence against a specific person. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Or violence in general, surely.
The old example, like if I go, you guys go kill that group of those people, then yeah, that's a directive at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the old example that's used with freedom of speech in the movie theater, right? You can't get up and scream, "Holy shit, there's a fire, everybody run," if there's not a fire, right? Yeah. It doesn't really work that way. But my point is this is where I'm kind of going. I wanted to paint a kind of a clear definition of that. My point is this, and I wrote something about it years ago. I might have to dig it up and see if I can repost it, about how I supported the Westboro Baptist Church's right to stand out and do what they do as a gay person.
Wow.
I support their right to stand on the corner and do what they do. Because if I don't, when someone else is in power that doesn't agree with me, I'm going to be the one that's banned from standing on the street corner talking about what I want to talk about. Right. It's very quick and easy for us, that slippery slope that we cling to, right? We kind of grab to it as we're falling down. But it's very easy to look at that and go, well, all's well, all's great. Nothing bad. It's never going to get any worse than this, right? We should totally ban those people from doing what they're doing. But again, at the end of the day, tables turned, right? And there's another piece to this too, tables turned. Would I want that being inflicted upon me, right or wrong, right? Whether we agree with I definitely don't agree with what they say. Right now, on the flip side of that, I think not the flip side, but on another piece here that I think is vitally important is that hate really festers in darkness, right? I can sit there and I can look and I can see those folks, and I can see their faces, and I can see who they are. I have a clear picture of who does not like me now, right? I would much rather have your conversation on full display to where I know who you are, rather than hiding in a dark, seedy alley somewhere going, "Let me tell you what I think about gay people." Right? I'm happier with it on full display, right? Because again, I think sunshine is a very good disinfectant, right? I think that it shines a bright light on those people. Why do you think the Ku Klux Klan members that you see, why do you think they wear masks? Because they knew if they were outed, their lives would be destroyed, right? Again, it's back to the same point. Let them spew their hate outwardly. Let them do it out in the public square, because now we can all see exactly who they are. And I don't have to do I don't have to go to their shop. I don't have to, I don't have to do anything with them.
Dude, I love the way you look at it. That was so good that I'm just going to completely forget the fact that you own rifles.
We can go there if you want to. I'm
No,
good with
I
it.
don't want to go there. It's dangerous. The small percentage of America that listen to my podcast will just leave if I say my point on guns. But I love what you're saying there around, because anyone that doesn't know that, the church that you're referring to, like, they are like some pure hate. They're
here.
hate.
I've seen them. I've met a couple of them actually. So
Dude.
they're based out of, I think they're based out of Missouri or something like that. I don't know exactly where but they basically they're near Cultish, right? You can go look them up. And they basically get in a bus, and they're known for protesting soldiers' funerals. That's one thing that they're really known for. So if we have a soldier that's killed in action and they have a funeral here when they come back, they basically hold up these signs and say that this is their signs, not me, but they say God hates fags. That's their sign. That's their normal sign.
Any soldier's funeral or a gay soldier's funeral?
No, any soldiers, because not all, obviously, but they pick and choose, I guess. But from what I understand loosely of their beliefs is they believe that those soldiers' deaths are as a result of America's loose moral stance on homosexuality.
But how can freedom of speech? Let me caveat what I'm going to say. I absolutely love and agree with what you're saying. That quote that you've said about sunshine and darkness, that's powerful. That really is powerful, and I really like that. But that's got to be a line. Like, if I was, saying goodbye to my brother, for example, who just died in the forces, and somebody was putting the sign up like that, mate, shit would go down. That's not happening.
Sure. And it does. So like as an example, there's counter groups. There's counter groups that follow them around, right? There's actually one that's like these big burly biker gang that follows them around. And
awesome.
Because obviously they can't trespass, they can't do those things. They have to be on public ground. So that usually means they're a couple blocks away, ultimately from wherever anything's are happening. Like a funeral, like a graveside service would be happening. They're usually at least a couple blocks away. Unfortunately, you can still hear their chanting, in certain situations. So what happens is you have these, it's like these, I forget what their name is. I don't want to make something up and butcher it, but it's basically like bikers against the Westboro Baptist Church or something like that.
Cool.
And they all pull up and they form like a human wall around them. Right. So back to their speech, right? They're allowed to do that too. Right. So they kind of pull up and they pull their bikes up, and like they rev up their bikes so nobody can hear them. And like, it's really, really neat to see them kind of counter that. But so again, I've met them here in Phoenix. So Phoenix has a pretty massive Pride Festival. I forget exactly what it is. They have a couple things that happen here in the year. But they have a pretty massive Pride thing that they have that happens. And of course they show up along with all the other slew of street preachers and their megaphones. Right. And, they're there. They have their little area where they go. And the funny thing is this, most people show them a lot of love and respect just as humans. The gay people walking past that these people are telling them that they're damned to hell, and they're like, they're just gonna go on about their day, you know.
Wow.
And they're screaming and chanting and throwing stuff and getting all angry. But yeah, they're an interesting group. But again, I think that I'll always fall back on that if they're right to go out, and their inherent right, again, I'll distinguish that I don't quite believe that rights are something that are bought and sold and then give back to you by the government. I think that's an inherent right, whether you believe in God or some other higher power or just yourself, right? It's an inherent right that you intrinsically have, right, to be able to speak, right, and to be able to spread those whatever beliefs you have, as shitty as they might be. Go look on LinkedIn at some of those. You have a blast. But if they can't do that, when the tables turn, somebody's going to stop me from doing that, right?
But there shouldn't be a need.
In that position, right? When we find ourselves in that position of going, there's real atrocities happening, I'm going to get out and say something about it. No, you're not. Right?
Yeah.
Again, as stupid as what's going on with them, evil. Right? Exactly, right? I think I don't think there's a middle ground, right? I guess that's where I'm going with that. This is my very, again, in my very American rant here. This is my middle ground. There is no middle ground, I believe, in freedom of speech. Either it's there or it's not, right? It has to be uninhibited speech. Again, lack of or short of calling for harm against individuals. I don't subscribe to this camp that words are violence, right? I don't quite subscribe to that, because words are words. They're not really violence. Words can direct towards violence.
Sticks and stones
Right.
will break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Right.
What my mum
Right.
used to say to me. Tell you what though, Sam, it still hurts.
It does, absolutely,
still
for sure.
hurts.
Well, so there's another piece there that I've accepted long ago, and I think that it's something that we have to really think about, though, is that we have many inherent rights, that we are kind of born with, right, just as human beings. But to not be offended is not one of those, right? You don't have a right to not be offended, right? That's just factual. And I know in our very woke world, like you have full right to offend me. You absolutely do. I have full right to be offended, but I don't have a right to just not be offended as I go through this world.
Wow. I mean, dude, that's like the deepest conversation I've ever had. I think I could genuinely talk to you all day. I love the way you look at this. I love the way you come at this. And actually, I think we need a lot more people that think like you, including, I've learned a lot from this conversation, 100%. And I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people would probably say, why do we need to have this conversation on a safety podcast? But I'd be interested in your point, but I think that there's two sides to this. One, if you're not able to be yourself, I don't think you could be anything else. So if you as a safety professional, and you could probably attest to this, can't be yourself at home and in your own environment and in the workplace. So in your case, you couldn't be, a gay man. Then you're never going to be your full potential as a safety professional, which puts the business and everyone else at risk.
Right.
And I think the same applies to the people in your workplace. If you're creating a workplace in which it's not safe, it's not comfortable to be gay, to be black, to be Asian, to be of a religion, to be anything, then that's just as dangerous as a risk to the business. However, here's my final question to you. Is what if I'm trying to create that safe space in my work environment, right? And predominantly there's a large group of, say, people of a certain religion that doesn't agree with gay people, for example, and we have 2 or 3 people that work there that are gay. Like as an employee, as an employer, what a nightmare to be able to manage. Like, how do we kind of manage that? Like, no hate in the workplace. Like, yeah, that's great, but you're still like not going to sit with each other. Like, we're trying to create a culture in our workplace, but yet now our social challenges are impacting the workplace.
Right. Well, and I want to back up here too before I dive too far into that. And I want to say this, that we kind of went down a little bit of not a little bit. We went down the very Sam's view and the very American view of freedom of speech, right? And I want to say that what I was talking about, obviously, I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm talking about that kind of level of freedom of speech in your organizations. Organizations are private organizations. I just want to say this because somebody's gonna be like, "You mean that you believe that?" Right?
I'm with you. Yeah.
I'm talking town square on your own dime. No,
I get that. Yeah, I get that.
Right. So like when I'm working for ABC company, right? They absolutely have control over my tongue.
It's called a paycheck.
They pay for it. So I do want to say that. So if you do have folks, like if you have the Westboro Baptist Church manifesting in your organization, you should fire those folks. That's what I would say. Right. Again, back to that point that sunshine is a disinfectant. I'm all behind you firing those folks if that's what you see to be fit. It is your private organization. You do with it as you will. But, so I don't know. That's a really tough one, because if you do have that kind of large religious sect within your organization, and then you almost have a minority within a minority by only having a large grand scheme of, or a large group of these folks and a very small group of these folks. I don't know. I don't think that the answer is to just demand that they be okay, right, with each other. I'm still going to come back to this really simple answer that I think that if you really find a way to get them to know each other, I think they're going to have a hard time hating each other.
Yeah, there's a great
I
example of that in Rebel Ideas. So that I can't remember the guy's name, but he was he was quite senior young man in a white supremacist group that went to a very small university. So that because the university was very small, I can't remember. It's a very popular story. But because it was so small, he was forced to be in a mixed group of ethnic minorities, and long story short, a person from an ethnic minority befriended that person. It came out that the white person was part of this white supremacist group, blah, blah, blah. Everyone kind of boycotted him. But this one person said, no, I'm not going to boycott him. I'm going to embrace him. And and now they're like best friends. The guy has completely cut all ties with the white supremacist group, and now kind of protests against it. And it's just like, comes back to my earlier point when we started this conversation. It's just like, it's exposure. It's getting relationships with these people and realizing, oh, there's so much more to this person than that one thing that I judged them on.
Well, and I think it's this. I think it's whether we're talking about, again, like I think it's probably a really funny example though, because even as I kind of mentioned this arsenal of weaponry that I have, right? We probably, I'm going to make a pretty easy assumption here that we probably strongly disagree on that subject.
Yes, we do.
Right. But the point of the matter is that we have a lot more in common than not.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean we're not going to be friends anymore. Right?
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna wait till we get you in Arizona and then let you shoot one of these guns. You're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's probably. Don't get me wrong. I'd go to a gun range. We are getting into the wrong conversation. I need to go. I've got to get some dinner. But I would go to a gun range and shoot a gun, and I understand that. But having it in your house. And I just think it creates so many. Look, Sam, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. That is a different conversation for a different day.
Baiting you a little bit there, but
yeah.
I think it's this. It's back to what we're saying. It's if you get to know people, either side, any side, when painted as multiple sides, any side, it's hard to hate people. And I think there's kind of drop a story to give people homework. If you don't know who Daryl Davis is, as soon as you get done listening to this podcast 2 or 3 times, you should go and YouTube Daryl Davis. And he has a book, but I'll tell you, just go YouTube him. And he's been on podcasts here lately. I think he's got a new book coming out. But for those of you that don't know who he is, Daryl Davis is an African-American man that grew up, I believe, in the deep South here in the United States. He's amazing. I watch him now because he's just this awesome piano player. Like, I love watching him play piano. He plays like this old school, like boogie woogie kind of piano, Southern piano stuff. It's just awesome. Yeah. But what's very interesting about him, I believe he's a reverend too, but what's super interesting about him is that he started befriending Ku Klux Klan members.
Yeah.
So he started, he started befriending Ku Klux Klan members, and he started having conversations with them. And not to reduce this story to something that's not. And again, you should go look this up. You should go, anywhere that you can watch anything Daryl Davis. It's just such a neat story. He'll pull out these big boxes, and he's starting to set up a museum, I think, of these Ku Klux Klan outfits, which are the big robes and the wacky hoods and all this kind of stuff. Because he eventually gets to the point in their friendship where people go, I can't do this anymore. I love you, man. How can I hate you if I know you? You're such a cool person. I'm here. And he basically air quotes derobes them. Right. And they usually give him those robes as a gift. It's that and all of that. You think about, it's hard to think about someone that's filled with more hate than maybe a member of a group like that. Right.
Yeah.
And to think that someone that is the epitome of what they hate can sit down, that person has the courage to sit down with them. And on the flip side of that other person at least has enough interest as to either this person is insane or something, or enough love somewhere in their heart to sit down and have this conversation. And those two, which are exact opposites, befriend each other to the point to where this one completely changes their mind about that subject.
Yeah.
Someone that in their views sees this other person as probably one of the most vile things on the planet. Right. And then now they're friends, and they're coming over and they're hanging out, and they're coming to cookouts, and all of a sudden they're not in the Ku Klux Klan anymore. All of that happened in Daryl Davis's stories, because he's done this about 100 times now.
Yeah.
That's 100 less hateful people in the world, which is kind of amazing if you think
Yeah,
about
that
it.
is
Like
amazing.
extremely hateful people, right?
Mm.
He's done all of that, every bit of that, not through laws, not through demands, not through all the kind of more traditional things, not through protest.
Mm.
He's done that through getting on an even playing field with these people and having a conversation.
Yeah,
That's
empathetic
simple.
conversation. Mm.
That's simple. Just eye to eye, person to person, human to human, real conversation. And it comes back to that point that if you know someone, it's really hard to hate somebody.
Dude, well, I mean, that, boom. I'm going to leave it there. We should end it there. I'm going to end it there because I'm going to get my dinner. But that was outstanding. Thank you very much, Sam.
Sure, man. Yeah, that was a blast.
Okay, peeps, hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you very much for listening. And please remember that if there's anything we've said throughout this conversation in which you think that we've said it wrong, or we could have said it better, or anything like that, then please let us know. Please do feedback. Help us learn. Help me learn. But ultimately, please do it in a manner in which remembers what we're trying to achieve here, and that our aims are good and moral. So yes, please do remember that, and please do feed back. I realise you just kind of said that a bit like Boris Johnson. Please do remember that, and please do feed back. Anyway, don't know why I'm channeling my inner Boris Johnson. Thank you very much to Paradigm HP, and more specifically the HSE subscription service, for sponsoring the Rebranding Safety YouTube channel and podcast. Don't forget to check out their learning organisation webinar as well. Outstanding service, and once you've logged in, you get access to all of the backlog as well. If you want to improve, become a better risk or safety professional, and please go and check out projectmollitiam.com, or message me. I'll get you on one of our community calls completely free of charge, so you can try it before you buy it. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, do whatever there is on whatever platform you're listening to. Give us a rate and review on iTunes. Share it with someone that you think will benefit or even enjoy this conversation. But otherwise, thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week. Safe.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and its guest, and do not necessarily reflect the position of the companies. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are examples only, based on limited and dated open source information, and should not be utilised in real life as the only solution available. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the companies. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic or otherwise, without prior written permission from James MacPherson.